My friend Haley, I love that we reconnected. I love that you reached out to me after all these years. I never forgot you. I never forgot your story. And I love the stuff you've been up to with your books and things. But I just wanted to say, I honor you for honoring your prompting to reach out to me because I know that your story is going to impact a lot of my listeners.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. And I'm just thankful for you to give me this platform because I just kept feeling that prompting just to contact you. And I do think that somebody out there is going to hear this and it's going to help them in some way. So thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. This will. So let's dive into your story. Because it kind of started, it kind of really manifested in your adolescence, but there were some things leading up to it. I mean, now that you have so many years, like you're a mother now.
Yeah.
You've now talked to many people who struggled with what you did. I'm interested in retrospect, but let's start with your story and then we'll talk about how adult you kind of sees that period of your life where you really
I definitely have changed. And a lot of people say, how can you tell your story because it is so painful and I'm a different person now, and I think that's how I can do it. But I have so much empathy for people still battling this, and I can still relate because I did go through it. But yeah, let me just tell you how it started. I was 15, 16, and I started just having very low self-esteem and a battle with depression. And so I think that started the struggle within. And I started noticing, I had a crush on a boy and I started thinking, oh, he's flirting with all the girls that are so skinny and beautiful. And I was feeling not so beautiful and too fat, just how we do when we're teenagers. And then I started feeling so much guilt for eating. And it was interesting because I would eat like a pizza or something, and I just felt so much remorse, like I had sinned for eating a pizza. And I kind of grew up in an environment like, well, if you sin or do something wrong, you've got to, repent and change, and you want to be better, right? And so I vowed, okay, well, I feel horrible and sinful for eating that pizza, so I'm going to promise to never eat that pizza again, and I'll change my ways, right? So that's kind of how it started snowballing. And then
can I just pause there for a second, because I think that there are a lot of religious messages that get transmitted that are so harmful for the feminine body.
Yeah,
sure. I meet actually a lot of people who are still unpacking that trauma, that they didn't link it to that because they thought it was spiritual languaging. They didn't see it as abuse, but it really is in the eyes of the beholder and how you perceive what you're told. And some of us are more sensitive to those messages than others.
Sure. And a lot of it was linked to media. Think about it. You'll see a commercial that will say, hey, this is guilt-free ice cream because it's fat-free. Oh, so if I eat regular ice cream, I guess I should have guilt because the guilt-free ice cream is fat-free.
I know. I didn't put that together until you just said it. That's so true.
And there's even restaurants that have menus that are guiltless menus, right? Have you seen that on restaurants?
Oh yeah, Chili's. Chili's has that.
So I wasn't going to say names.
Okay, that's okay. I like to call that out on my podcast. I'm going to call it out.
But there is menus that will literally say guiltless as part of the menu. So if I buy something on this side of the menu, I should feel guilty, right? So I think I was picking a lot of that up from media and from advertising and from just everywhere you look. So that's where I think I was getting it subconsciously as well. But yeah, so I started saying, okay, but then it started evolving to not just eating pizza, but it was to eating just a sandwich. And then eventually just eating an apple. So anything I was eating was bringing so much guilt and remorse. And I just started
that word guilt is also linked to what you said, like sin.
Yeah.
So it's it's like beyond guilt. It's now a sin.
Yeah.
To consume those things. Like, it's not like you were shooting heroin. I mean,
right. And for me, and then I was definitely feeling a high off of it because I was losing weight, and people were saying, "Oh, you look so good. Have you lost weight?" And that is a comment I wish we could just get rid of. Like, how many times do people have to say that? "Oh, you look so good. Have you lost weight?" Like, can't you just say, "Oh, you look beautiful today," or "Hey, like." And so, anyways, I was getting a little bit of a high off of that, like that attention, and so that kind of fed it, the disorder, a little bit too. And then, but so anorexia is often called the 10-headed monster because there's usually at least 10 underlying things causing it or triggering it. So yeah, I had depression, I had low self-esteem, I was feeling guilty for eating it. I also had, there's I have the most amazing selfless parents that you'll find out later in my story. But I did have a dad that would comment quite often on other people's weight and often my mom's weight. And I remember thinking, if I got fat or if I was too big, my dad wouldn't love me anymore. And so that was definitely one of the heads of this beast, right? So like media, like we were just saying, messages were playing in it. There's so many things. And for everybody, those 10 heads of that monster might be different. But that's why anorexia is so hard to treat, is because there's so many things that come together to create that perfect storm. So anyways, I started cutting calories and fat grams drastically, very quick. And then I was over exercising because that was my way of repenting, right? So I had to exercise to get rid of those calories. That was my way of repenting for eating those things I shouldn't have eaten.
So very punitive, sometimes when you use the word repentance, that has a religious charge to it. So it's like oftentimes many people will see God's processes as punitive, as punishing, and that we're actually kind of on this martyr path of like, the more I suffer, the more spiritual I am.
Yeah. I'm sure that was going through my mind.
So how old were you around this time that this was kind of all?
So 16.
Okay.
And I just remember hating myself. I was in such a dark place, and I hated myself. And there was a point where I felt like the less of me, the better.
I remember I told you on the phone last week, like that phrase has stuck with me since 2007 when you said that.
Yeah, it's
the
true.
less of me, the better. When did you put that together? Was that probably later? But
I think it was subconscious at that time. But looking back, I knew that is what I was doing. I just wanted to disappear. I didn't want to exist anymore. And that's what I was doing. I remember at night, like I felt like I'd been taught like it was wrong to kill yourself. Like you shouldn't kill yourself. But I remember being in such a dark place. I remember I would cry at night and pray just that I would die. I would just pray, please don't let me wake up in the morning. I was in such a dark, dark place. So eventually though, I was getting sicker and sicker. It got to the point where I could see only a skeleton in a mirror. So it's so at the beginning, like I said, I liked the attention. I was losing weight, and it was just like, it was almost admirable to people. Then it got too far. And I couldn't stop it. It became an addiction where it was controlling me. It was out of control. I'd lost way too much weight. I was actually at 50% my healthy weight. So you have to imagine a healthy teenage girl should weigh around, and I'm tall, I'm almost 5'10". I have large bone structure. So I should be around 150-ish. And when I was admitted into the hospital, I don't want to say numbers because it's very triggering people that might be watching. I'll just say it was under 50% what I should be weighing. So at this point, like I said, I was in so much pain. People don't understand, like, being that thin actually hurts because the bones of my body were protruding all the time, and I had no fat or muscle to protect myself. So I would just bumping a wall would cause bruising along my arms, and just sitting down would hurt because the bones would actually like be pushing through my flesh, and I'd have bruises on my bottom, or when I'd lay down, I'd have bruises on my back just from the bed cutting into my body. And then my veins, could see my veins popping through my forehead, and it actually hurt feeling my veins, also my arms like pushing through. And then my heart was always struggling. I could tell it was like struggling just to survive. There's so many symptoms that are like when your body's shutting down like that. Like my hair was falling out. My skin was starting to like slough off because it was just dying and flaking. It's not it's an ugly disease. It's a very ugly, ugly disease.
Yeah. So I remember in your book that your parents kind of started to notice these things. Maybe you weren't attending family dinners or whatever, but then the physical changes, obviously. When did your I know you said that you sort of like got this high from the compliments of people around you who were saying, "Oh my gosh, you're losing weight." Were you starting to now getting people saying you're too thin, or and how did that affect you? Was that still, did you still consider that positive, or because I know that's
no? So it was very confrontational all the time because they would say, "You need to eat more. We need to get you help." And I would just run in my room and cry and shut the door and say, "Leave me alone." I just wanted to be left alone with my disease. I didn't want them to bother me. I didn't want them to take away this addiction to me because it was serving a purpose of a coping mechanism for me. And it started to become part of my identity. And I didn't want them to take that away. I just wanted to be left alone with my disorder. I had a brother who caught on really, really quick what was happening because he was just 3 years older than me. And he was in high school. He had more education on what eating disorder was. My parents didn't catch on as quick because they didn't really know what anorexia was. They were in a generation where they hadn't really heard about it. But my brother kept saying, she needs help. This is what's going on. And then he had left. He graduated and he had left. And so when he wasn't around to be constantly like hounding my parents, like, she needs help, I was kind of glad in a way because I'm like, oh, good, now I can get away with this type of a thing. But yeah, my parents, they fought and fought and fought for me to get help, and I just would fight back. Eventually, though, I remember when it got so severe, one day I was in the shower, and I remember just the exertion of, going through that process of moving your body to cleanse your body. It was too much for my body. And I remember my heart, like, I felt it just struggling. I could tell, I'm like, I'm not going to survive. Like, I think I could literally just die right here in the shower. I'm not going to make it. And that's when I realized how bad it was. And I remember as I got out of the shower, I was drying off, I just collapsed to the floor and I started praying. And I said, if you could help me through this moment, just get me through this moment without my heart stopping, then I will finally accept the help my parents are trying to give me. I will finally get help. And that's what happened. So that's when I finally went to my parents and said, okay. And they connected me to a center for eating disorders here in Utah.
And eventually you had some mental health issues along with that, because I mean, those two are going to coincide, right? You can't have, when you're trying to heal physically, there's always that emotional, spiritual component to it also that can manifest as emotional imbalance, or even the precursor to what you're talking about. You had these 10 things that you're saying, these underlying issues that were probably creating a state of depression and anxiety prior to you becoming anorexic. So at one point you were hospitalized for that as well.
Yeah. So what happened first is I went to the center, and they started working with me. And once I went in there, they actually said, this is the worst case of an eating disorder we've ever had here. They were a new facility. And they were kind of scared. They were scared, like they didn't know what really to do with me. But they have inpatients, but I was at that point, I was willing. I was like, okay, I want to get better. They're like, okay, you're willing. We'll let you go home and work with us. Just keep coming in for the treatment. But the disease was so strong and so powerful. It's really weird because I would look at myself in the mirror at this point, and I could see I was a skeleton. I could see I needed to gain weight. But as soon as I sat down with the food, I couldn't do it. And when I would eat, as soon as I ate, as soon as I had the food inside my stomach, I immediately started feeling fat. And it was really weird because when I started doing counseling, they said, you say the word, you feel fat, but fat is not an emotion. So what are you really feeling? And that's when I realized, yeah, I'm not. So what am I feeling? Okay, I'm actually feeling contaminated. I'm actually feeling unworthy. I'm actually feeling dirty. I'm actually feeling this. When I say I feel that. And so I had to start connecting that when I say that, it's not really what I was thinking I was saying. So that was a really powerful switch in my mind. But it's interesting because even though I felt like, okay, I need to get better, as soon as I had the food in my stomach, my brain would like switch. It's almost like two people in my mind, a constant battle in my brain. Like, okay, I need to get better. I need to gain weight. As soon as I ate, it was like this overwhelming fear of gaining weight all of a sudden. It's just this disease is just so confusing, and there's this battle. And then you just imagine like yourself just being contaminated and just all of a sudden blooming up. And it's just so confusing. And then at that moment, you just panic and you're freaking out and you're like, oh, I gotta exercise. And even though you know you're supposed to gain weight, and it's just a confusing disorder. But so it was too hard for me to do it at home, even though I had the desire. And so at that point, my mental, my brain, without the nutrition, with the lack of fat, started to break. Like completely break. And so what I mean from that is I started to develop psychosis. So it started out where I couldn't complete some sentences. I couldn't put together sentences coherently. And then my parents were like, we got to get her into the hospital. This is like emergent. So I was put in the hospital. And at that point, I didn't understand what's going on. I was wrestling with the technicians. I was kicking them. I was fighting them. Like, again, I couldn't complete sentences. They'd tried to put IVs in my arm. I couldn't understand what they were doing. So I was ripping them out. I was tearing them out. Because I was so psychotic, they're like, well, we need to put her in the psych ward. But I still needed the, nutrition of things and the physical help because my liver was shutting down, my kidneys were shutting down. My heart could stop at any minute, but because I was so psychotic, they needed to put me in the psych department. But it was the adolescent psych. Well, in there, they don't let any parents come. And right before they took me in, because I was starting to lose my mind right before. And I didn't understand how to feed myself. So my mom was helping me eat. She was helping me figure out how to eat. But when they put me in the psych department, there was nobody there to help me. And so they would give me the food, the plates. I remember there'd be the domes over the trays of food. And I didn't understand what to do with it. I'm like, I could smell that there was food there. And at this point, I was starving, I was hungry. And I remember seeing the dome, but I didn't understand what to do with it. And I remember thinking, I think I'm in a prison. I think I'm being tortured. I just remember thinking that. And I'm like, I think this is like some way to torture me. There's food here, but I can't get to it. And this is like part of their torture. And then they would come in and they'd be like, oh, this is just the anorexic patient that's being stubborn and she's not eating. So let's just take the tray back. Let's just take it. They didn't understand. I didn't know how to do it. And I was so lost. I was ripping off the sheets off the beds. I was, throwing water cups around. I was just crazy because I didn't understand what's happening. And I was so confused why my parents weren't there. I just kept begging and begging for my parents to come. I felt abandoned. I just didn't know what's happening.
I'm sure that was really hard for your parents too, to not be able to be with you.
Gut wrenching. They were destroyed. And so my mom was allowed to come the next day for visiting, and she could see I was so much worse. My hair was in, ratted tangles, and I was just, I lost even more weight. I was a mess. And she's like, what is our goal here? Our goal is to help this girl. I need to stay and help her. She doesn't understand how to do this. And so she had to go to the top of the hospital administrations to fight them and say, I'm not leaving. So you're going to figure this out.
Good for her.
I know. Exactly. And so for the first time in the history of ever, they let a parent stay there with her daughter. Luckily, at the time, there were no boys staying in the ward. There was only females. And so they put me and her on the side of where they would have hosted the males. So we were there all by ourselves on that side. And then they had the females on the other side. And she stayed there and she hand fed me every meal.
Wow.
And she said it was like feeding a toddler. Like it would take sometimes hours to get me to eat because I didn't understand what was happening. She would brush my hair. She would rub lotion on my arms. She would brush my teeth. She would have to bathe me because I wouldn't understand how to bathe myself. I didn't even know my own name.
And weren't you like an athlete? Weren't you like super, like getting good grades and like high achiever, high school, like all of that before?
Yeah.
Yep. And you're now this helpless child.
Yeah. I was a 4.0 student. Yeah. And yeah, I loved playing softball. I was 4.0 student. And here I was not knowing my own name, not understanding what to do with a toothbrush, just because of anorexia. Yeah.
So the nutrient starved really brain and body function, as well as what the other component you talked about was just, you can't, if you're losing sleep and you're not getting the right nutrients and all of these things combined, it is a psychosis. It has to be.
Yeah. Right. So she literally saved my life. She helped me get all the food I needed, the nutrients I needed. The doctors, before she came in, when I was admitted, they said to her, she's going to die. There's no saving her. She's way too far gone. We've never seen anyone with this degree of anorexia plus psychosis before. Like I said, my liver, my kidneys were failing. They said she was going to have a heart attack at any minute. They said if by a miracle she survives this, then she's going to be psychotic the rest of her life. So just plan on putting her in a mental hospital the rest of her life. This is, she's not going to survive this. But we believe in miracles, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure your soul was in the driver's seat fighting, and even though you weren't maybe coherent, there was something there that was moving things. This was your mission. This was what you came here to learn. Of course, you would have to go through such depths. Everyone that I interview on this podcast who is now teaching something, or is, let's just say, in service to humanity, they had some hell story that rendered them an expert in what they came here to teach. They had to live it in their bodies. They had to go to those depths, most of them. Yeah.
So speaking of miracles, I often say that eating anorexia didn't almost kill me, but it did. So at some point during this, I did have a near-death experience. It is very sacred to me, so I'll just touch on a little bit of it. But and I do understand that our listeners are of different faiths and everything, but this is, my truth. And so I'll just say that.
Oh, sure.
So I do have a sister who passed away and a grandma also. And during this time, I was able to be with them for a little while. I don't understand all how it happened, but I just know it did. So I was my spirit had left my body for a while, and I was in this I just say it's kind of a spiritual space, like a spiritual waiting room, because I know I didn't cross over to the point of like, okay, you're dead forever. This is where you're at. It was kind of like a waiting area, like where I was in a deciding space, I guess I would say. A waiting room or something. I don't know how you would explain it. But it was amazing. I was out of pain. I was out of pain, and it was the most beautiful place of pure love. And in this space, I felt my Savior's love, and it was like the whole atmosphere. You just breathed the love of the Savior, Jesus Christ. And I equate it to being under the sun. Like, you don't have to try to feel it. If you're outside, you'll just feel the sun.
It's like permeating everything around you.
Yeah. And I never got to see the Savior, but I felt it in the air. But I was with my sister and my grandma, and at that time they told me, your mission's not complete yet, but you do have a choice if you want to stay with us, or if you want to go back to Earth and complete this mission. And they started showing me all these things I still had to do on Earth. And one of the things was that you need to write a book and tell your story. Tell what is your experience with your eating disorder. Tell about being here with us. To let people know that everybody has purpose. This great divine plan that Heavenly Father has for them that they can only complete on this earth. And they told me to write a book, and my sister told me a few things I could do to help get better from my eating disorder. And
now, how old was your sister when she passed away?
So she was just a baby. So it's interesting because she was born before me, and my grandma had passed before I was born. And I remember thinking, how is it that you guys love me so much? Because you didn't know me. We never met on Earth. How is it that you love me so much? Because I felt their love so strong. And in that space, the communication was so fast. Like, you didn't even have to verbalize it. And our spirits communicated instantly to each other. And not only with words, but with feeling. So every single thought we had was communicated through pure feeling and emotion. So every little thought they wanted to communicate to me, I could feel what they felt for me. And I remember they had so much love for me. And I kept thinking, why do you love me so much? And they said, we knew each other before you went to Earth. We knew each other, and I was so surprised by their love. And one of the other things they told me is, that I needed to still have a family, and that I was meant to go on, get married, have a family, and just all these things they were telling me were so beautiful. And I remember being so excited to come back. And that's why it was so perfect for my book to be called A Future for Tomorrow, because I finally felt I finally have a future for my tomorrow, because I was so devastated before. I wanted to die. I was trying to die. I was in this, such a
lost
depression.
your will to live.
Yes. Yeah. And now I was so excited to go back and to complete these things they told me. One of the things my sister told me and I didn't realize at the time, but she was actually giving me ways to heal from my eating disorder. And one of them was to go back and to learn sign language. So
So
ASL.
interesting.
And what this did and why this was a huge key in my recovery is this gave me a passion. It gave me a new identity. So I was no longer the girl with an eating disorder. I was no longer the anorexic girl. And that was where anorexia consumed my every thought, my every minute of my day, where I was counting every calorie. I was consumed about what I was going to eat, what I'd already eaten, how much am I going to exercise today. It consumes your every minute of your life. But now I could focus on learning this new language. And it could be, oh, I'm the girl that knows sign language. I'm, and the ASL, American Sign Language, became my new passion. And I didn't know at the time that that was going to be a huge key to my healing. But she told me I needed to go back and learn sign language. The other thing she told me that was a huge piece of my healing was I think I needed to reveal some things from my past, some past traumatic experiences that we needed to dig up. Like I said, it was one of my 10-headed monsters, right? This is one that I needed to heal, to talk to counselors about, talk to my parents about, and to process so I could heal. So she told me that was another thing I needed to do.
Interesting. Wow. So many layers to this beautiful culminating, like kind of like a rescue for you, really. I mean, I think that when we are at our lowest of lows, we just feel so alone and we feel unlovable.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're like, why do you love me so much? It's like,
Yeah.
I'm sure at that time you did not feel worthy of love, maybe, or I'm not trying to put that on you, but it feels like you were saying, you kind of isolated and you just want to be left alone with your disease. And I find that in my lowest points of my life, it was like utter aloneness, utter feelings of unworthiness for whatever reason that I had constructed in my head. So I had distanced myself from God, from Christ, from all of those things that had previously given me peace.
Yeah.
I just did this, hand thing of just like, I just want to be alone.
Yeah.
But those are the most powerful teaching moments spiritually for us when we realize we're not alone. We're all connected, and that I don't know how it works, pre-earth and post and the spirit world and the realms and the dimensions, but I do know that like there's a very vested interest in our incarnation, in our bodies. There are beings that are very, very interested in each one of us. I don't know, like I said, I don't know how it works. My interview that I did earlier today was with a woman who talked about spirit guides, and it was the same thing. And it's what keeps us from really embracing that extra support and help that's available to us is our own feelings of unworthiness.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when it was time for me to leave them, I was so sad. I'm like, I don't want to leave you, but I'm excited to go back to this, my journey. And they said, we will still be with you. And they said, we will be there with you. We'll help you. We'll be there to protect you. We'll be there to celebrate your happy times. I remember specifically saying, will you be there when I get married? And they said, we'll be there. We'll be there with you. So yeah, they're still around. We just can't see them, but they're there.
So you start to construct this new identity. You don't want to be the anorexic broken girl, whatever. You wanted to find a passion and outlet, some way for you to redefine yourself. And ASL was that for you.
Yeah. So I was in the hospital for a month. I came out of the hospital. So it was kind of interesting because my mind was still healing. So when I got home, there was parts of my hospital experience I couldn't remember, parts of it I could. And then I would, like, when my mom would give me my food to eat, I'd look down and it was kind of like my past mind was catching up with my mind that I had in the hospital. And it was like kind of starting to piece together, starting to catch up together. And I remember there was a moment when I looked down at my plate and there was like pancakes and bacon and all stuff on the food. And I was like, whoa, I don't eat this. And my mom's like, no, you've been eating this for a month. And she's like, yeah. And she's like, you just ate it yesterday. And I'm like, no, I did. And she's like, yeah. And that was really powerful because I was able to say, okay, I ate this yesterday and then my world didn't come to an end. I survived it and my body's fine. Like there's something that is really irrational with anorexia that you think like if you eat something on your forbidden list that you feared for so long, your body's just all of a sudden going to be, you know, it's
Right.
very irrational. Like you're going to all of a sudden have this huge stomach or something. And I'm looking, I'm like, no, I'm fine. My body's just healing. It's proportioning everything out normally. I'm okay. And my mom said, I ate this yesterday and I lived and I'm fine. And so there was something really powerful in that I was okay. And so I was able to kind of connect my brain from the, you know, the two sides were starting to heal and be like, okay. And so that kind of really helped, that helped me. But I still, once I got better, started healing from that, my anorexia mind still wanted to fight, you know, still wanted to come back. And I had to literally retrain my brain saying, nope, I'm not doing this anymore. And I had to very consciously tell my brain, I'm not doing this anymore. And I had to find this fire inside of me and I had to be stubborn. And when my brain wanted to say, nope, I'm going to feel guilty if I eat this. Nope, you're not going to eat this. You can't eat this. No, I had to say, no, you're not doing that anymore. I'm getting better. I'm not going to let anorexia win this anymore. And I had to retrain my brain and be so stubborn. And I had to just catch it, recognize it and say, nope, we are done with that. I'm getting better. And I know my brain, when I started feeling that guilt before, I let myself fall into it and let myself say, yep, you're going to feel guilty. Nope, we're not going to do that. We're not going to eat that anymore. There was a part of me that let it happen. A part of me that chose, okay, I'm not going to eat that pizza. And then I had to find that brain, that thought again. And now and say, nope, I remember those thoughts. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And I had to choose, nope, I'm choosing health. I'm choosing to fight this. I'm choosing to get better now. And I remember thinking my brain got me into this. I'm going to have my brain get me out now. And I did it. And I did it. And I'm telling you, anyone, if it's struggling now, if you're fighting this, you can do it. You can do it. You have the power to fight. You just have to find that fire, that stubbornness I know you have, and you can fight it and you can get out of it.
It's powerful that you had the awareness, even though you were still healing with your mind, that you found that courage and that fire, even though you were still healing. I think a lot of times there's this learned helplessness, like I can't or whatever. But if you have a body and you're breathing and you know that what to do, like in your case, you knew you had to keep redirecting, like, oh, I'm not going to do this. No, we're done. And you had to do that. Not just choose it one time.
Right.
You had to keep choosing it moment by moment by moment. And I think that is a strong precursor to healing anything. It's like, oh, I have the power. I can choose to command my thoughts. I can redirect.
Yep.
I can reframe. And that is how that's how you change anything, really. But was someone telling you that? I mean, were you being kind of coached on that, or is that just something that kind of spiritually, just intuitively?
I just did it on my own. I think I just kept remembering that experience I had with my sister and my grandma and remembering those promises and remembering that future and knew I had to do it.
So let's fast forward a little bit, because I mean, you ultimately, obviously, that was healed, and then you met your husband. How soon after that? It wasn't too long, was it? I mean, well, of course you were. By the way, how long did that take? So you said you're about 16 when this was all kind of coming down. How long did it take before you were like sort of stabilized, I guess, to where it wasn't a huge, like, running your life type of thing?
So I did get counseling. I don't want you to think I just didn't get counseling.
Sure.
I absolutely got counseling. And like I said, I had to deal with past stuff. I had to deal with all those 10 monsters, like I said, that caused all the underlying issues. So you cannot do this on your own. You do need help.
Sure. But your therapist is not with you all the time.
Right. So
At
so I did get counseling. I did get counseling. I got through it. Then I went to college, and then I met my husband when I was 21. We got married right before I was 22. And then I had kids. I remember one time at the Center for Change, they said, where do you want to be? Like, where is your end goal of happiness with all this? And I'd say, you know what? I would love to just have a meal and it just be part of my day. And that it wasn't something I obsessed about for 3 hours before and 3 hours after.
Mm.
And I just thought, that's impossible. That's impossible. I don't think that's even possible, but that would be my wish. And I remember after I got married, I had a kid, and I remember we were just going about my day. I was helping my son with his stuff. I loved being a mom. It was just such a joy. I took me to lunch. We had lunch. I went back playing with my son, and I go, oh my gosh, it just happened. It just happened. I just had to wait lunch, and I didn't even think about it. And my life is so full of joy, and it was no big deal. And food is not even a second thought anymore. And I'm like, it just happened. And I just want to say there is hope. I mean, I was as bad as you can get. Like I literally died from anorexia. Yeah. And I am completely healed from it. And food is just an afterthought now. And there is hope. There is hope for anybody.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, so when did you start writing your book, your first one, Return from Tomorrow, or Future for Tomorrow? I almost said
So it was when I had my, I remember I had a little toddler at home. So it would have been around 2004-ish, 3 or 4. And I remember feeling those promptings like, okay, it's time to write your book. And I'm like, really? I thought I would do that when I was like 40. You know? I'm like, I can't do that. And I remember being so hung up on the title. Like, I don't even know what to name it. I don't even know how to name it. How am I going to write this? You know? And I just remember thinking, oh gosh, I was praying about it. How am I, help me. I don't know how to do this. And then that night, I remember being kind of in between asleep and awake. And I felt my sister's spirit come to the side of my bed. And I heard her whisper to me, a future for tomorrow. And I heard her whisper, and then at first I'm like, what? And then I was kind of half waking up, and then I felt her stronger, even stronger, her presence again. And I heard it again, a future for tomorrow. And so my sister named my book. And so there we go. And once I had that experience, I knew I wasn't going to be alone in writing my book. I knew I'd have the support on the other side of the veil, and I knew it was meant to be. So from then on, I was able to it just came, it flowed. I got it done and published in 10 months. And
I'm jealous.
So it was meant to be. I've been
working on my memoir so long, but I read that in 2007. And then you came and spoke at a workshop conference kind of thing that I had for women. And I remember reading it and just being like, oh, because I had young children, and especially my daughter. And I was thinking how it was so powerful for me. And I told you this on the phone last week. Because of your book and a couple others I'd read, I became very, very conscious about how I talked about my body in front of especially my daughter. Yeah. And certainly wanted to take the stigma out of identifying her worth, but she's very beautiful. But like, I don't want to lead with that.
Right.
And I certainly don't want to cut myself down in terms of my body weight or anything like that around my daughter. And, fast forward, here she is 23 now. I told you this on the phone. I did a lot of things wrong parenting, but I have to say, this really made me feel good. She's like, called me one day and she's like, Mom, I was just with a bunch of, she has a lot of college friends, and she's with a bunch of her girlfriends who are now in their 20s. And they were talking about how they have linked a lot of their issues with their own bodies by what they heard their mothers saying about dieting or this cleanse, or I gotta drop, or oh, do I look fat? All those things that their mothers said. And Savannah was just sitting there going, wow, my mom didn't do that. Like, wow. Hello, Cherie. And so she just had to tell me that. And I was like, oh, thanks. So I did a lot of other stuff wrong, but that part, I was so sensitive to that because I remember the messaging. I remember that. I mean, coming from so many, it's like, I want to be the one who tells Savannah she is not defined by a size.
Right.
And like I said, she is very beautiful. She's very thin and all of those things, but it's not because there's something, that she had to restrict herself, or like you said, feel guilty around, or develop this body image that was connected somehow to how I was viewing my own body. So I feel like we broke that. We totally broke that pattern, which we were celebrating together.
I love that. That's so powerful. Yeah, you know how I mentioned all those underlining issues. We already know my mom's the hero in my story. She's totally the hero in my story. But that was one thing she struggled with. She did. She would put herself down in front of me quite often, and she was constantly on diets. And she did. She taught me how to hate my body. She did. And she did. That's just something if there's nothing else that anyone else takes from this today, I would ask them, please, please, please don't put yourself down in front of your daughters, especially. And women that diet, their daughters are twice as likely to develop eating disorders. Mm. So it is your powerful influence. And I would even say they can feel the energy that you're putting out about your body.
Sure.
Actions speak very loud. Even like you're taking a picture. Oh, hide me in the back. Everyone else go in front of me so you can't see my body in the picture. Or I'm not going to, just
exactly. And it just comes out sometimes too. And when it did come out because of my programming, I would say, oh, wait, like I would catch it and then say, I didn't really mean, you know what I mean? Like I became super conscious, and yeah, your story is so powerful because of the season of life that I was in when I met you, and just, coming into sort of like, I had been Mrs. Utah, and there was all that stuff with pageantry and all the stuff that I was kind of dealing with, like this perfect body image kind of meets like perfect mother, Pinterest, all, just the whole, like trying to define who I am outside of my body. I was healing that already, like, because I was 3 years post Mrs. Utah at the time that I met you. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to teach about the divine feminine and Heavenly Mother and all of these things, is because we don't always have those role models in front of us. We have to craft it in our own being. And anyway, so here you are now. You didn't just write that book. Like you realized it kind of starts in childhood. So you started writing children's books.
I did start writing children's books. So one of the reasons is because I was out public speaking, and a lot of the moms were coming up to me and saying, this book is so perfect for me and my teenage daughter, but I am having issues with my second grader, or my my 5-year-old, or my 8-year-old is getting bullied because she's overweight, or maybe she's not even overweight, but her friends are saying she is, or
yeah.
And I was just seeing it so much with the younger kids, and it was breaking my heart. And so I started writing some children's books. My first one is called From Head to Tummy, and it does talk a little bit about weight related bullying, and talk about just like the truth about true beauty, and creating a healthy relationship with food and with your children. I always put tips in the back for parents. Mm-hmm. And then my newest release,
which I love, I have to tell you, it came in the mail, and you wrote a little message to my 7-year-old, to Emma, in there. Mm-hmm. And I was telling you earlier, like she freaked.
Oh,
she thinks you're so famous, and like, because it's such a beautiful book. It's so beautiful. So yeah, I'd love for you to talk about that.
Oh, thank you. No, that means a lot to me. I love hearing about the kids' reactions. I love that. Thank you. Mm. Yeah, it's a true beauty princess story. And in the end of that, it also has tips for parents to help teach their kids to value the true beauty in their children.
It's called Lily's Reflection, right?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's called Lily's Reflection. And that one was really special because I had my niece is the illustrator, and my niece started it when she was only 14.
That is amazing, because it is so well done. It is just illustrated so powerful.
Yeah, you would never guess a 14-year-old illustrated it.
I'm sure it was very therapeutic for her to do it because of what you wrote in it, and kind of what that process was. I'm sure it was, as a 14-year-old, I just can't imagine. Yeah,
I hope so. She did beautiful job. I was beyond thrilled with how it turned out. And so yeah, and my little nephew had overcome leukemia, and he has a special little story there. But she has been doing homeschooling because they have been in quarantine to keep him safe and healthy, and I think that just helped her really hone in her skills. She wasn't able to just go off with her friends or do other activities, and so she just really developed this artistic skill, and I think that really shows in the artwork. But I'm really excited about that book as well.
So where can people find your books? I know I got mine on Amazon, but you sent me Lily's Reflection, but I ordered the other one on Amazon. So where's the best place for people?
Definitely Amazon. They're all on Amazon. Or you can go on my website, which is HaleyHFreeman.com.
Perfect. Well, I just think you're so inspirational. And I think the thing that strikes me the most about your story is you summoned this fire. You summoned it. No one gave it to you. No one forced you to do anything. And we can talk about control with eating disorders and all that, but ultimately you took back your own power. And now, how many children do you have now, and how old are they?
3. Yeah, I have 3, and they're all kind of in the teens and tween age. Yeah.
So they're all still at home. They're all impressionable. They're all learning from your powerful story. I'm sure you broke so many of those ancestral patterns of negative body image and all of that stuff. But just what you ultimately did, the highest version of what you did is you found your voice, and you're out there now serving humanity with this story. I think ultimately when you're a change maker like that, you recognize that it really never was about you. It's what you came to experience so you could help others heal. So you would just really embody that. So I honor that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
So thanks for being on. It's good to reconnect with you.
It is. I thank you again. I'm honored to be here. Thank you.